Now, the question we're asking this morning is there a shift in the Fine Gael position on repealing the 8th Amendment to the Constitution, which prohibits abortion? Both Micheál Martin and Enda Kenny seem to have said, look, we're not going to go there in terms of putting this issue back on the agenda. But over the weekend, Minister James Riley said he favoured a repeal. This comes on top of Francis Fitzgerald and Leo Varadkar previously asserting same, and Pascal Donoghue came out. Well, it seems that for his trouble, James Riley got a dressing down yesterday before the cabinet meeting from Enda Kenny for his comments. But later in the evening, Enda Kenny told the parliamentary party that there would be a free vote, and after the election there would be a constitutional review with recommendations on this topic. So, are we facing another referendum? It's a pleasure to welcome the programme Cora Sherlock, Deputy Chairperson of the Pro-Life Campaign. Good morning, Cora.
Good morning, Ivan.
What is your reaction to these developments?
I think what we're seeing at the moment is very much a case of the Taoiseach trying to say something, but really saying nothing at all, because I don't think there's anyone in the country who witnessed what went on in 2013 who would have any faith in the idea of this issue being put to a convention. What we saw in 2013 was two sets of Oireachtas hearings where experts came in, gave up their time to the Oireachtas to give evidence, which was then completely ignored by the government to go ahead and introduce what has to be said is a very dangerous and a very dangerous act, which isn't based on any medical evidence whatsoever.
Well, what is your attitude to the new question? Should there be another referendum on the 8th Amendment? Would you oppose the holding of a referendum?
Well, what I would say about that is that the Pro-Life Campaign has never opposed referenda. We've always been in favour of referenda. What we do oppose, however, is what the abortion campaigners in the country at the moment are suggesting that we should have, which is a referendum which would give an opportunity to remove a human right from our Constitution, because that's what we're talking about with the 8th Amendment. The 8th Amendment guarantees the right to life of an entire group of human beings in our country, the unborn. So let's talk about what it really is. I mean, this slogan that we hear, repeal the 8th, let's talk about what's actually behind that and what a referendum would mean. It would mean removing a human right from the Constitution. I don't think that's what our Constitution is for. It's not what it was written for. And I don't see why we should have a referendum to do that.
Well, according to James Riley, what he said at the meeting was that he couldn't, as a father and as a doctor, stand over a situation whereby expectant mothers were expected to carry to full term fatal fetal abnormalities, and that there was no prospect of life, and that in these circumstances they were being refused determination. Does he not have a point?
I think, the language used for when we're talking about babies who have terminal illnesses or life-limiting conditions in the womb is very offensive at times, and it's very hurtful to families who are in that situation, because there probably are families around the country listening to this programme who have been through that and who have been offended in the past, or who are quite shocked by the way some Oireachtas members talk about their children. Let's remember, these are children who are in need of medical care, and we wouldn't talk about newborns in that way. We wouldn't say that their lives should be ended. So I think it would be far more in James Riley's line to be listening to the stories of families around the country who have a very different experience. There are families who have been put under pressure to consider their options in those situations. Let him listen to those and ensure that doesn't happen again. There's one family who I know of where they were told that their baby wasn't going to survive, and they had such a negative impact that they stopped going to their hospital completely. Their baby did survive, and she recently turned 1. She's now learning to swim. He's representing one side of the story entirely, and I think it's very regrettable that happens. And, it's not his place to do that. The Minister is the Minister for Children, so for him to be calling for a referendum which would allow some children's lives in this country to be ended is really reprehensible.
What about the other point in terms of that your position is ultimately hypocritical, because what actually is happening, in thousands of young women are actually getting on a boat or a plane to the UK, and that, you know, your whole campaign, your whole Eighth Amendment hasn't saved lives. It's just meant that people have to do this by going abroad.
Well, there's a couple of things about that, Ivan. I mean, the idea that we're hearing that the Eighth Amendment hasn't saved lives, the Eighth Amendment has saved, you know, tens of thousands of lives in this country, because we hear all the time, and people are involved in the pro-life campaign and the wider pro-life movement in this country, because they are people who had booked an abortion in another country, and in the time that it took them to travel, they changed their mind. So their child is alive because of the Eighth Amendment. That's one thing. The other thing I would say is that, yes, we do have to do more for women and families who feel that they need to travel for an abortion, because nobody should find themselves in that situation. No one should feel that that's their only option. Their only option is to end the life of their unborn baby. But I would make this point. The pro-choice campaigners who talk about those women travelling do not speak for all of those women. They certainly don't speak for the women in the group Women Hurt, who regret their abortions deeply. And that's a group set up by women for women to give voices and an opportunity and a platform to women who are suffering very serious loss. I would just mention one woman who was an English woman, Emma Beck, and she aborted twins. Her mother shared her story so that other women would be aware of the devastating effects that abortion can have on women. Emma very tragically aborted twins, and after that abortion, she took her own life. And in her suicide note, she directly referenced her abortion. She said, "I see now that I should not have had an abortion. I would have been a good mother. I was afraid. I want to be with my babies." Just imagine the tragedy of that.
Okay, you've explained that. Just finally, two quick questions. The Taoiseach is talking about a free vote, that there will be no whip, no ejection for people's views from the parliamentary party. Would you favour that? And secondly, in the general election campaign, given that there may be a referendum in the lifetime of the 32nd Dáil, will you be asking candidates to state their pro-life or otherwise pro-choice position during the campaign? Will you be active in the general election?
I think firstly, in terms of the whip question, the time for Enda Kenny to give a whip, or to give a free vote rather, was in 2013, when he completely refused to do that and was very undemocratic in the process. So, you know, it's kind of too little too late. At the same time, I would still welcome the opportunity for Fine Gael TDs to be able to vote against that referendum, which would...
Okay, and will you be active in the general election campaign?
I mean, we will be giving advice to our supporters who want to know who is going to stand up for unborn life in the future, but they will be going this time on record and political record of politicians and their actions, not their words, because unfortunately their words didn't count for much in some cases before, and that's something. And there were very fine TDs who stood up for human life and for evidence-based medicine, which is what we always support in the pro-life campaign.
Cora Sherlock, Deputy Chairperson of the Pro-Life Campaign, thank you for joining us on Newstalk.